So when I pulled up into the PD, it was just pure chaos. And I got out of the car and asked one of our officers, Mike, what was going on. And that's when he told me that Matt had been hit by a car and he was at Sutter Roseville. And Mike was on his way to go get Matt's parents, John and Marilyn. And I remember going into the department and my team was already starting to gather, and we were told just to kind of suit up and be ready, and just waiting around, waiting for some news.
Rocklin Fire, Station 3, medical aid, officer down, Highway 65, Galleria Boulevard, officer hit by a vehicle.
Rocklin Fire, Mark 227 is responding to Highway 65.
Copy AMR 227, responding to Highway 65. Station 3, Rocklin Fire. Engine 25 information, major injury, officer down, and we're requesting medvac.
So I remember just being at home and getting a phone call. And I thought it was odd because I'm like, well, I'm not on. I usually get phone calls. I wasn't in a position where I'd get phone calls normally in the morning like that from the PD. So I was at home, I remember just waking up and seeing my phone going off, thinking, this is weird, why am I getting this phone call now from this person, from the PD? And so I just remember answering the call and getting the word, and
we hear a radio transmission from Matt's roommate, but we didn't understand it. But we knew he was riding with Matt, but we just didn't understand what he was saying. And then he made a second transmission, and we finally realized that he was saying that Matt was hit by a car and Matt was down.
I looked at Rich and I said, that dude just hit something. I don't know what it is. We need to pull him over.
And at first I remember not thinking it was real and just kind of answering the call, and at first really having like, not knowing what to think. And so I was like, okay. And I just remember hanging up, and then all of a sudden it kind of hit me at that point, like, did I just receive this call?
Rich is trying to communicate with the driver clearly intoxicated, not giving any information.
The only thing that I could remember at the time was to, if I couldn't provide first aid, was to grab his hand and talk to him. So that's what I did.
I still remember him standing there with his ride along. I still remember him, we joked about something, whatever it was, and wrote the ticket, and that guy left.
When they posted me at the hospital, I remember looking in the room and seeing Matt, and he looked very peaceful. They had his head wrapped up, and I remember our chaplain, Witt, was walking in with Matt's fiance.
I remember coming up the freeway, coming eastbound 80, and just seeing the message boards and seeing all the cone patterns, and thinking that, yeah, this is for one of us.
I remember thinking I didn't know if she had knew yet, but apparently she didn't know. So the chaplain had said something to her I couldn't hear, and I remember her dropping to her knees and screaming. I just remember the shrill voice when she found out.
You know, we get into this career. I think we all know going into it that we're going to go to funerals, we're going to lose officers, we're going to lose friends. But I don't think anybody I realize as Andrew figures out that you're going to get the phone call about someone in your own agency.
With police officers, long hall, and they were lined all the way down the hallway on both sides from every department. And there was a light at the end of the hall, and there was Matthew.
He was just beautiful. He was laying there, had a sheet across from his pecs down. He had bandages, of course. He was hid from the trauma. But otherwise, he's almost like he can get up and say, "Dad, I'm okay. Dad, I'm going to make it."
That day really brought together the police department. We had already been a small department and close, but this was different because none of us had ever expected to lose one of our own. It's always there, right? There's always the thought of something could happen, but to act when it's happening, when it's happened, we didn't know what to do, and all we had was each other.
Some weeks after I lost Matt, I had to go down and pick up his vehicle at the police department. And when I got in his vehicle to bring it home, I thought, Matt's supposed to drive this home. He's supposed to drive this home, not me come and go get his vehicle. And to this day, when my mind crosses those memories, it's difficult, it's tough, but it's also a blessing that that we had him. He was there with us. And in a lot of ways, he still is and always will be.
A small agency like this, it's not, like you would go months and months without seeing somebody, but you see somebody on a regular basis, and then the reality hits that they're no longer here, that, the dangers of the occupation, that kind of drives things home a little bit, how important and precious things can be.
So through all the different years since we lost Matt, I've been asked, how do you know him? What describes him? And the words that I use, and I think I've heard other people use, is bigger than life. And that comes back to, honestly, the picture that is always in my mind of him. And you've seen it around town probably. And that's just him standing there, standing straight up and tall, and his hands are out wide. And that's just how he was. Anytime he came into a room, he lit up the room. He has this huge smile. When I worked patrol with him, didn't really seem to matter what the day was or what the day had entailed for us, but he always just was happy and just this big presence. And he wasn't a small guy either, so he was always very muscular, things like that. So I think that's why a lot of people just say bigger than life, and that's what I've always used for him.
I would say that he was dedicated to this profession. He was homegrown, as in he came from Rocklin, his family was here. Everywhere we would go, people knew Matt, from the cashier or the bagger at Rayleigh's to almost everyone that we meet, somebody knew Matt. And so he was very approachable and likable. And like I said, he was dedicated to this profession, dedicated to this department, and dedicated to this community.
He was always upbeat. He was always there ready to help his partners. He always wanted to go out, do the best thing he could for the citizens in the community. And like I say, I can't remember a time when, he wasn't smiling. He had, like I say, one of the biggest smiles, and was one of the happiest guys I probably ever got to know while I was here.
He was most known for being friendly to everybody, even people he arrested. I think he kind of built a rapport with them. He was very well respected, and he's very talented. He was really good at what he did, especially enforcing getting drunk drivers off the roadway.
Happy. He's the happiest person I've ever known. He was so even-tempered. I hardly ever saw him get upset. He was just a sweetheart, compassionate. He was driven, really a sweet young man.
I think it's just, just his smile. Oh, his smile. He could light up a room with his smile. And he was just this tall, when you walk into the PD and somebody comes through the back doors and you can see just their outline when you're down the hallway because of the way that the lighting is. And you always knew it was Matt when he came in through that back door, just how tall he was. And that bright smile, that's what you saw.
You just got comfortable. People got comfortable around him. But by the same token, he had such a big smile and a big personality. When he come into a room, you couldn't help but notice he was there.
He had a presence about him.
He had a presence about him.
Lit up a whole room, and you couldn't help but smile when you saw him. Even if you were in the worst mood, or even if you were upset at him for some reason, he would smile at you. You're like, okay, we're good. It could change the whole day.
And I think part of that was just his faith and the way he grew up. He was just, it was a blessing. It was just so much fun. I mean, as a father, I couldn't have, don't get me wrong, I always talked about having two little girls or a little girl that would be like my wife, but I got the two boys and it was just a joy, just a ride along as far as the life went, yeah. I will say one thing about it. One of the most funny stories I had was he was in FTO training. So he was not the officer he was going to be, and they had a call to a residence where there was too much party, too much going on. And as soon as they came in the door, all the girls started screaming, "The stripper's here, the stripper's here." And oh, did he have a hard time trying to make that work. And he got harassed for that. Yeah, oh, can you, I can't imagine what that had to be. He must have just, that's a moment I wish I could have seen.
Matt used to call me Smiley. That was his nickname for me, because when I first started, I was always smiling. And every morning I would hear him say, "Good morning, Smiley." And I could still hear the sound of his voice saying, "Good morning, Smiley." And I asked him one day, I said, "Do I really smile that much? Should I tone it down a little bit?" And he looked at me and he said, "Don't ever stop smiling." Sorry. This job makes you sometimes not want to smile. I don't smile as much as I used to. But in those moments, I just think about that.
The 3 letters we got, which came just out of the blue the week of our loss, were from people that he had arrested. And their hearts were broken. They shared their tears for the loss of Matt because he made such an impression on them on the way they were going to the jail and the way when they were booked. The dialogue he had and sharing his life, sharing whatever it might have been that he talked about.
I don't know why I always flash back to just going to Denny's with them on the graveyard shift. I think part of that was Denny's was the only restaurant open back then. Patrol officers now have it nice because there's a lot more they can eat here, but back then it would be Matt and I, and we'd just go to Denny's and we'd have these nice conversations and we'd be able to not only just talk about work, but also we were both back then dating people and just life. So we'd have great conversations about life, where we're going, what we want to do at work. And those are kind of some of the things I remember. It's just that the time of just eating dinner in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. and then sometimes having to just jump up and run to a call and then continue our conversations later.
We were at Del Oro giving away a scholarship one evening and a young man came up to us and said, "I had written you a letter after Matt was killed, and I just want you to know that he changed my life by what he had to say on the way to the jail." And he said, "I'm so glad that he was the one that arrested me."
I got talked into doing a rap presentation, and it was for briefing. And I thought, okay, they want to know about rap sheets. I can certainly do that. Well, it wasn't about wrap sheets. We had recently got a new device called the wrap, where they basically wrap people up like a burrito when they're not going how they're supposed to be going. So I walk out of dispatch and I walk down the hallway and I see the whole patrol team, including Matt, and I just remember this big goofy grin on his face and just him going, ha ha ha. And next thing I knew, all of patrol had me on the ground wrapped up in this burrito, and I couldn't help but laugh.
The picture that you'll see in the hallway where Matt's standing there off to the side, he's got this grin on his face, but his arm is off to the side. And the picture kind of cuts off his arm a little bit. He's holding some fireworks that we got off some kids that night. That's 4th of July. I took that picture. And it was in the old building, it was right here. And so that's kind of one of the iconic pictures, actually, that we have of Matt. But the funny backstory is that Jeff's off to the side. The reason why his arm is over here is because he's holding sparklers or he's holding a bottle rocket or something like that, I can't remember. But I took that picture. We were in the back lot, just lighting a couple of them off. I don't know, nothing that took off, but you know, some of the fireworks that we took off of the kids.
And then another time, I used to bake a lot, and I'd bring food in all the time. And he had the container of cookies, and he probably ate 8 or 10 in 3 minutes before the sergeant had to physically remove the container from him to tell him to stop eating all the cookies and save some for everybody else.
I don't know if I'm supposed to tell this story, but it's probably one of the funniest stories that I can remember about Matt. When we worked together, we had gone through, like you say, SWAT school together. We were headed down to a local SWAT competition. I remember as we were traveling down there, most everybody was pretty much in comfortable clothing. We weren't in uniforms or anything like that. As I recall, Matt was wearing t-shirt, shorts, and a pair of flip-flops. And there was a car that was driving very erratically on the freeway. We got about to the 680 split, had contacted CHP thinking that the driver was most likely intoxicated or DUI. And because of the delayed response from CHP, the decision was we were going to stop the car even though we weren't in uniform. We had cars that had lights to them, but nobody was really actively armed. And so we get this vehicle stopped, and all I can remember seeing is Matt basically going up and kind of conducting a quasi felony or high risk type stop in a pair of shorts, a t-shirt, and thong sandals. And once CHP got there and took over the investigation, we obviously got back in our vehicle and left and went about our way. But that's just kind of the person he was. He was willing to step in and help out and do what he felt he needed to do. At that time, it was to keep the rest of the community safe.
So like I said, the morning was a whirlwind, and even the days after that. But I think some of the bonds that, if you want to say, either silver linings or something that did come out of it, I mean, there's been a lot of lives changed because of it, and a lot of good things have come out of it. I mean, just his legacy and everything else and the education we've been able to do based on drunk driving and things like that. But I think one of the things for at least us, and there's very few of us that are still working here that were here during that time, but the bond that created between everybody in the department at that time, the whole department became a much closer family because of it.
It was just a unity like you've never seen before. Just everybody just clung to each other and got through it, talked and hugged, and sometimes we sat in silence and sometimes we didn't. So, and the community was really great to us as well, sometimes a little overwhelming, but they were great in their way, but we had each other, and that was hard.
I think, you know, you're going through the initial shock of everything, but you know, just sitting around in silence, just waiting and not really being able to articulate how you feel. But I think we refused to be away from each other at that point. All of us just kind of needed to be together, and I think it brought all of us closer together. It made us kind of watch out for each other a little bit more when we were out on patrol.
When Matthew was 4 years old, my mother and father-in-law came to me and said they'd like to see him go to Christian school. I said I would too, but I can't afford it. And they said, we can. So his life started in faith, which is, in a way, my wife and I did too when we were younger. But the bottom line is that 2 weeks before I lost him, he taught Bible study for the first time with a friend. And then next thing you know, he's gone. He's taken from us. So for 2 years, I beat up God over this. How could this be? How can this be so wonderful and yet so terrible? And God opened my eyes to realize the fact that I was fortunate to have him for the 29 years. Said, Johnny, you had him for 29 years.
So I think the legacy and the mark they kind of left was be bigger than life and be kind. And in some sense, he is also kind of a gentle giant as well, because he was strong. But he also had a soft spot for people. So
it's ironic that he lost his life to a DUI driver, because he was dedicated to finding and contacting DUI drivers all the time. There were some nights where we would come in and he'd get 2 or 3.
Every year I have about 240 students, and every year 240 young people hear Matt's story.
He's inside of all of the Rocklin PD staff every day as they provide service to this community.
Well, I mean, we have a gym named after him. He was known for fitness. You know, if you wanted somebody who was going to be a great trainer for you in that gym, Matt was the guy.
And what I've learned is just what an amazing cop he was, and what an amazing human he is. And just the impact that he had on this community, his big smiling face, his love for service. From everything I've heard, he would light up a room, and so I get the opportunity to go out and talk about him frequently. I talk to him, the Rocklin High football team, to Del Oro's football team every October, and get to continue on that legacy. It's just an honor of the job.
People knew him as being kind and caring, and a mentor for others. I've known a lot of people at different agencies have come to me and said, I knew Matt, and he inspired me to become a police officer, and he inspired me to be a better person. And so he really left. Rocklin is Matt Redding, and Matt Redding is Rocklin.
People have said that, you know, he did a lot of good work when he was here, and they say he's still doing good work where he's at today. And that's food for our soul.
if someone's thinking about drinking and driving, what would I tell them? You know, I've had many different jobs in this career, and I've actually had to try and get this message through to the younger kids, high school kids, because I've worked on a high school campus, and so I've had to try and give this message to people before, and unfortunately people still don't listen sometimes. But the biggest thing is the choice of drinking and driving, the choice of getting in that car and turning on the key after you've had really any number of drinks, is a poor choice, and you shouldn't do it. And it's only your choice, only you can decide whether you're going to or not. But by making that choice, you're going to impact not only your life, but everybody else's life that is on that street at that time. So if you make the choice to get in the car after drinking, you're going to change everybody's life that you might impact. And just as we felt in this department 20 years ago, someone decided to get in a car and drive after they've been drinking, and they killed someone. You might not think that that's going to be you. You might think that, oh, it's just one drink, I get in the car and I can drive, and nothing's going to happen. But you can't guarantee that. And worst case scenario, someone's going to lose their life. And it's going to have a trickle-down effect to everybody that person was connected to. And there's no taking that back. In today's world, there's so many other options to be able to get home, to get a ride home. So just don't do it.
Don't do it. You have no idea the destruction that you can cause with one poor choice. It's just not worth it.
Don't do it. It's not worth it. I mean, look, took one of our officers' lives and many other lives off the road. Someone's son, daughter, husband, wife. Nowadays, you can just call an Uber, so it's much easier than it was back then.
The impact, the consequences that we felt here at the Rocklin Police Department, that we felt as a community, that the family has felt. One bad decision led to the loss of life for Officer Matt Redding. It led to parents losing their son. It led to our department losing a brother and a hero, and this community losing someone that meant so much to it. So very simply, don't do it.
Don't do it. There's so many different opportunities, so many different ways that you can get home safely. There's so many different people that'll help you get to where you need to get to safely. Because that act is selfish. If you get behind the wheel and drive, there is nobody that wins in the end. Neither you or any individual that you come in contact with will ever be the same because of your selfish choice to do that.
Is there anything that you would like to share or talk about that I didn't ask?
Yeah, I mean, I know that the department, I know personally myself, I miss seeing them around. Appreciated his friendship.
I guess the only other thing would be for John and Marilyn to know that it's important to me anyways, on a personal basis, keep Matt's legacy alive. As the years go on, there's going to be less and less of us at this department who worked with him and knew him on that basis. But as long as I'm in this community and at this department, my goal is always to make sure he has a living part here. One of the reasons I've always had a passion for working with kids and working within schools, and part of that is probably related to Matt as well, because of Matt's sports and everything he did. So one of the reasons I started Rocklin Police Activities League was to also help further that legacy on, for the police department and for Matt. I mean, it was important for me to put Matt's badge number in the Rocklin Police Activities League. So its logo has 215 in there, so that no matter what, my hope and my goal is to make sure that when all of us who worked with them have retired and left this agency, that there's still always pieces of him here. And I know there always will be. His badge will always be here. His legacy will always be here. But I also want to make sure that that translate to other things. And you know, and when we do our junior police academies and some other things, we talk about that stuff and try and keep Matt as part of that. So that's always important to me. That I don't know if I've ever relayed to the writings, but I guess this can now. So.
I don't think so. I mean, I think this is something that, you know, we've never really talked about. We never really talked about it. I think it was just so painful. You know, we just kind of stayed quiet, you know, kept our emotions to ourselves and never really discussed it. And I felt we did a dishonor to him by not talking about it, you know, by not discussing how we felt and not, you know, there's stories, so many stories that we all had about Matt that we should have shared with each other, and we didn't. And we're just now doing it. And I think, you know, it's important for us to be able to talk about him and to share those stories. You know, it brings us a little closer together. It brings us a little closer to Matt.
Attention all units, please observe a moment of silence in honor of Officer Matthew J. Redding, who was killed in the line of duty on October 9th, 2005 at 04:08 hours. Effective October 9th, 2006, call sign 3 Paul 20 and Rocklin Police Department badge number 215 are hereby retired, never to be reissued, in honor of Officer Matthew J. Redding, killed in the line of duty on October 9th, 2005. His ultimate sacrifice will never be forgotten. Rest in peace, kid.